Alright, well, welcome everybody to, merrymitch part 3. Yeah, we're gonna be starting in just a bit here, but until then, hang out, relax, grab a drink, and we'll get started very soon. Alright, I'm also gonna test out how. 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 Alright, I'm also gonna. Oh god, I just realized what happened. I'm very sorry. I unmuted my stream on Twitch and forgot that, you know, my desktop audio comes through. So yeah, that was big time my bad, because there was so much feedback, oh my goodness. But hey, you know, this stuff happens. Alright, without further ado, I guess let's jump into the game. Up a little bit longer though, just to let people file in. If anybody is fancying a little, gaming and reading today. Oh gosh, sorry, that was probably very loud. Hey folks in the stream, how's my audio sounding? I tried adding a compressor and a an limiter to the microphone. I'm hoping that it is yeah, you know, doing good things for the sound quality. But you know, it'll be up to you guys to let me know. Alright, welcome everybody. This is me. This is my cat. Well, not my cat, but oh goodness, sorry, other hand. This is Ron over here. If I can point it out correctly on the screen. There we go. That's Ron. We're hanging out today, I think. And we're gonna jump into a little bit of gaming here before we get into the main event of reading. Looking forward to both. So let's have at it. The music. I'm gonna turn down the volume for Ori. Just a hair, just a wee bit. There we go. Is that audio okay? Let me try to lower just a smidge more. Alright, there we go. Ah, there it is. Heck yeah. We got Ori, ladies and gentlemen. Alright. Yeah, let's go ahead and get going. Sorry, I think I said that about like 5 times now. Oh, wait a second. Where is my save? Did it? Where's my save? Did I load up the wrong version? Hang on, sorry. Shoot. Oh, dude, I've been playing the normal version this whole time. Ah, because I forget it gives you the... Sorry, I've got the joystick drift, and it's controlling the mouse. Shoot, dude, yeah. I've been playing the regular version of Ori. Do I, at this point, try, because I didn't get very far in the game, do I jump into the definitive version, or do I continue on? My voice is pitched low? Why in the world would it be pitched down? Is it pitched down? Sorry, I just noticed that in the chat. It is? Shoot, dude. 1 second.
Okay, testing, testing, 1, 2, 3. Is my voice still pitched down? Um, is my voice still pitched down? I know you said be right back, but I do need to know. It's not pitched down? Haha! Yes! Alright, sweet. So I guess back to the question at hand. Do I continue on with my save in Ori and the Blind Forest normal edition? Or do I jump into the definitive edition? I'm just gonna make the decision. I'm gonna jump back into the normal game. Don't got too much time left, so I think that would be best. Alright, game audio okay? Yeah, there's my save. That's weird. I feel like it ought to let you, you know, do saves like across both. I'm not very far. I've only played about like 30, I don't know, like an hour total, but I have not made much progress in it. Yeah, it may be worth it. Because I do that definitive in the title is quite tantalizing. I want to know what that definitive means. Like, I mean, why play the regular if I can do the definitive, right? Rats. All right. I'm gonna start up the definitive version. Shoot, man. That's still upsetting. Yeah, there's definitely a delay on the Twitch chat. However, like a full minute, you say? It probably ought to not be that long, right? Yeah, I do know the stream delay itself is a little intense. It's at least I think it's at least 30 seconds or something. Well, all right, let's jump into it. Do I go normal or hard? I think I'm gonna go normal. I think I'm a normal kind of guy when it comes to games like these. The other one didn't really give me an option for the you know, the difficulty setting. And I lost Ori to the Great Storm. I accidentally skipped this last time, so I'm also kind of glad that I get to see this. Oh. the strings in this, the plucked strings. Some good ambient tones. Alright. You get to be Mr. Jumbo. I'm loving this dude's outfit. And the way he walks. This guy has swagger, you know? He's got a certain pizzazz to his step. Like he doesn't care. Feather, not feather, is little thing. The Naru embraced my light. Oh, dude, that little smile on his face is too adorable. As a child of her own. Welcome back, Mr. Colio. Did I tell you I love you today? I don't think I've done that yet. I love you. Oh, dude. This little goober. Oh. Alright. We may be starting the reading a little bit late today since there were some technical difficulties there at the start. Apparently my dang voice was pitched down. Oh god. Hello. Oh, stop this. My heart cannot handle. Oh. He ate orange. Why'd he put an X on the tree? You're finished here, tree. This is your last day. Been marked for termination. Got a little rope swing. This place looks like a solid place to live, you know? Got a nice little hovel here. Kinda like that term too, hovel. Well, let's go, montage. Go, guys, go. It took them a long time to build this bridge. Oh, it's time to feast, boys. Nom 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 nom. Oh, oh, I've got the goods. I'm running. See ya. On that fateful night, little Ori stole all the orange blocks. When I lit the skies ablaze. I called out to Ori. Music is getting somber. I don't like this. Yet hope never came. Oh, dude! Where'd your pep go, my man? The pep in his step is gone. I can't even jump with him. Oh, yikes. Oh, so they're on a food shortage. you can. No! No! Life withered and decayed. Why don't you just have little Ori do it? When the forest was blind. Yeah. Still, hope showed its face. You gotta bring it back, right? I'm coming, mama. Alright, these are memories, right? That was not a ghost. Yes, memories. Alright. Leap like a lemur. Oh, I see you in the foreground there. You can't surprise me, Goober. She's dead, isn't she? Is it a he or she? That probably doesn't matter. An orphan once more. I can't believe I skipped this last time. I did not know it was nearly this long. With no reason to stay. Aww. Searching for my light. Keep going, Ori. So weak and so frail. Come on. Gotta mash the button. When cries were met with silence. And hope went astray. Come on, get up. But my child's strength faltered. And the last breath was drawn. Dang, so Ori died. This is a rebirth story. light revived Ori, a new age had dawned. And this is where it starts off. Dang. My word, dude, I cannot believe I skipped that. Goodness, I'm terrible. My word. Alright, at least I know what to do in this first part. Okay, you. Oh, whoops. Yes, very much knows what to do. Slams face into stump. Okay, now there is... Yeah, there's that guy right over there. Alright, got the energy cell. Very nice. I guess I'll save. I probably don't really need to though. Oh, I need to. Oh no! Got you. I'm sad though. I don't want him to be crushed. It's the second time I had to do that. No good. No bueno. Nearly to a level. Deep in the forest, Ori found what was lost. Pick up the tiny light, Ori. Do it! The light, it calls to you. It goes boom. My strength is returning. I am sane, the light, and the eyes of the spirit tree. I was lost in this glen when she loosened her grip. I can guide you on your journey if you allow me to come. But be still. Can you hear that? They must have followed you here. They? What you mean? Oh, goobers. Oh, goobers. Big bad goobers. Whew. Alright. Goobers are eliminated. Alright, I need to get back to that safe side. Oh, I thought they were eliminated. I should have taken the cue. The battle music had not ceased yet. Their light shall return to me. These words the spirit tree once said. In the glade past the caverns we'll find him. There's a path up ahead. Alright, sick. I do want to make sure I get all the secrets that I ran into last time. Or collectibles, rather. Yoop. Let me up here. Alright, I'm gonna get quick flame for sure. Because I need the fire power. Yeet. I'm running. Can I get that? It would appear not. Oh yeah, the light well is over here. Oh no, I missed orbs. I missed the orbs. Let me have the orbs. Spirit wells are ancient structures that were used to quickly traverse all of Nibel. The light of the spirit well will also replenish your strength whenever you are weary. Oh, this thing can heal me at any point. Nice. Oh yeah, I don't have the wall climb yet. Wait, why to warp? Well, I cannot warp yet. Oh, one more time. Hey. Give me the orbs. Oh, hey. Nice, I got another ability point. Oh wait, I can do that at the well, can't I? Yeah. Ah, no. Let me down. Yeah, I can. Heck yeah. Spark flame. Alright, sick. Oh wait, let me save as well. Alright, it is 6:39. I know I haven't played all that much yet, but I think I'll play up to where I was off camera and off stream, and that way next time we can come back right to where we had left off. I'm gonna go ahead and exit here so that we can get into the reading. Yeah. Although I am very glad that I started on the definitive edition, because I had missed out big time on that prologue. Goodness, that was a good prologue. Because I thought, like, I played through like the tiny bit where you just like swagger walk as the kind of more chubby mama fellow. But so I was just gonna skip that part, but it wound up just skipping the entire thing last time. Alright. And exit. Very nice. Alright, so I'm gonna switch over to this view here. As you can see, we have the Snoopy zone, the Snoop zone right over there. He'll be hanging out with us as we read. And I will be here in the middle. Sweet. Just want to make sure my audio is all okay. It sounds nice and clean. And if I'm back away from the mic, it's still a-okay. Goodness, dude, I also forgot to play the intro theme. A little bit off my game today, goodness. Alright, cool. I'm gonna mute my mic, play the song, go hit the restroom. And I'll be right back. Join me for an adventure, oh, much like any other, with twists and turns and plot devices, words and wonder. Now my advice is listen close. What makes this story different is the teller and the toll. This one's ours and it's waiting to unfold. So come be merry with me. Oh, come be merry with me. Come on, be merry with me. together with twists and turns and plot devices, words and wonder. Now my advice is listen close. What makes this story different is the teller and the told. This one's ours and it's waiting to unfold. Did Ron entertain you guys while I was gone? Thank you, Keaton. I'm glad it sounds very peachy. I hope we enjoyed the intro theme. I am back from the restroom and ready to go. So, last we left off in Percy Jackson, The Lightning Thief by Rick Riordan. We were introduced to, you know him, you love him, that stinky binky, smelly Gabe. Percy had returned from Yancey Academy, winding up ditching Grover so that he could just go ahead and get on home. We were introduced to Smelly Gabe, who is the current husband to his mom, who is this very, tender-hearted character who has been through a lot and loves Percy dearly more than anything, and is the person in Percy's life that can walk into the room and simply that will make him happy. His mother surprised him when he got home with the fact that they would be going on a trip as soon as his mom could wind up ready to go. They went ahead and went off after a little bit of a barrier with Smelly Gabe. Nothing too bad though, and they went ahead and got on down to Montauk, which is their little beach house, where Mrs. Jackson wound up meeting Percy's dad. They had some tender talks on the beach. Straight from the can. They had some tender talks on the beach, roasting some marshmallows, eating some blue candy, and we learned a little bit more about his dad and what the mother knew about Percy's true nature. Soon enough, it started storming pretty bad, and Grover showed up on their doorstep. And something was a little off. He was not wearing any pants. But oddly enough, that was okay because he was, in fact, a satyr, or a satyr, rather. The mythical half-goat, half-man creature. And he had, in fact, been, stationed to protect Percy. He came out of the blue and was panicked because he believed that something was coming for them. So Percy's mother got very upset, and soon enough they were running, driving as fast as they could to the place where apparently Percy's mother thought he would be safe, the place that his father had wanted him to go long ago. So yeah, that's where we left off. The only other major thing that happened was Percy's mom died. Sorry, not to brush over that part, honestly. Yeah, no, that was an intense portion where the monster did in fact catch up with them right as they were reaching the edge of their destination. And oh snap, dude, pick up your drink. I hope you clean it up a-okay, and that it all gets well and sorted out. But yeah, Percy's mom wound up falling to the beast, the Minotaur. It had grabbed her and basically vaporized her in his hand. um, so yeah, that's where we left off. Percy wound up, after seeing his mom die, the fear was quickly replaced with anger, and rage, and he somehow managed to defeat the Minotaur by ripping off its horn, kneeling, and jettisoning it into his torso, which was quite the impressive feat. Percy didn't even really know how he even did it. And then afterwards, he even managed to find the strength to pick up his friend Grover and bring him to wherever it was that this place was. And the last thing he remembered was a familiar looking face of a guy in a wheelchair and a pretty blonde haired girl with curly hair. And that is, in fact, where we left off. So, without further ado, let's jump into it. Percy Jackson, the Lightning Thief, by Rick Riordan. Chapter 5. I play Pinnacle. Is it Pinnacle? Do you guys know what this game is? I think my mom corrected me when I read it to her and dad. But I'm gonna go with Pinnacle. Or Pinnacle. It was Knuckle. That's what it was. My apologies. Chapter 5. I play Pinnacle with a horse. I had weird dreams full of barnyard animals. Most of them wanted to kill me. The rest wanted food. I must have woken up several times, but what I heard and saw made no sense. So I just passed out again. Needed to turn on my light. I must have woken up several times, but what I heard and saw made no sense. So I just passed out again. I remember lying in a soft bed, being spoon-fed something that tasted like buttered popcorn, only it was pudding. The girl with curly blonde hair hovered over me, smirking as she scraped drips off my chin with the spoon. When she saw my eyes open, she asked, "What will happen at the summer solstice?" I managed to croak, "What?" She looked around as if afraid someone would overhear. "What's going on? What was stolen?" "We've only got a few weeks." "I'm sorry," I mumbled. I don't... Somebody knocked on the door, and the girl quickly filled my mouth with pudding. The next time I woke up, the girl was gone. A husky blonde dude like a surfer stood in the corner of the bedroom, keeping watch over me. He had blue eyes, at least a dozen of them, on his cheeks, his forehead, and the backs of his hands. When I finally came around for good, there was nothing weird about my surroundings, except that they were nicer than I was used to. I was sitting in a deck chair on a huge porch, gazing across a meadow at green hills in the distance. The breeze smelled like strawberries. There was a blanket over my legs, a pillow behind my neck. All that was great, but my mouth felt like a scorpion had been using it for a nest. My tongue was dry and nasty, and every one of my teeth hurt. On the table next to me was a tall drink. It looked like iced apple juice, with a green straw and a paper parasol stuck through the maraschino cherry. My hand was so weak, I almost dropped the glass once I got my fingers around it. "Careful," a familiar voice said. Grover was leaning against the porch railing, looking like he hadn't slept for weeks. Under one arm, he cradled a shoebox. He was wearing blue jeans, Converse high tops, and a bright orange t-shirt that said Camp Half-Blood. Just plain old Grover, not the goat boy. So maybe I had a nightmare. Maybe my mom was okay. We were still on vacation, and we'd stopped here at this big house for some reason. And you saved my life, Grover said. Well, the least I could do. I went back to the hill. I thought you might want this. Reverently, he placed the shoebox in my lap. Inside was a black and white bull's horn, the base jagged from being broken off, the tip splattered with dried blood. It hadn't been a nightmare. The Minotaur, I said. Percy, it isn't a good idea. That's what they called him in the Greek myths, isn't it? I demanded. The Minotaur. Half man, half bull. Grover shifted uncomfortably. You've been out for 2 days. How much do you remember? My mom. Is she really? He looked down. I stared across the meadow. There were groves of trees, a winding stream, acres of strawberries spread out under the blue sky. The valley was surrounded by rolling hills, and the tallest one, directly in front of us, was the one with the huge pine tree on top. Even that looked beautiful in the sunlight. My mother was gone. The whole world should be black and cold. Nothing should look beautiful. I'm sorry, Grover sniffled. I'm a failure. I'm the worst satire in the world. He moaned, stomping his foot so hard it came off. I mean, the Converse high top came off. Inside was filled with styrofoam, except for a hoof-shaped hole. Oh, Stykes, he mumbled. Thunder rolled across the clear sky as he struggled to get his hoof back in the fake foot. I thought, well, that settles it. Grover was a satire. I was ready to bet that if I shaved his curly brown hair, I'd find tiny horns on his head. But I was too miserable to care that satyrs existed, or even minotaurs. All that meant was my mom really had been squeezed into nothingness, dissolved into yellow light. I was alone, an orphan. I would have to live with Smelly Gabe? No, that would never happen. I would live on the streets first. I would pretend I was 17 and join the army. I'd do something. Grover was still sniffling. The poor kid, poor goat, satyr, whatever, looked as if he expected to be hit. I said, "It wasn't your fault." "Yes, it was. I was supposed to protect you." "Did my mother ask you to protect me?" "No, but that's my job. I'm a keeper. At least, I was." "But why?" I suddenly felt dizzy, my vision swimming. "Don't strain yourself," Grover said. "Here." He helped me hold my glass and put the straw to my lips. I recoiled at the taste, because I was expecting apple juice. It wasn't that at all. It was chocolate chip cookies, liquid cookies. And not just any cookies. My mom's homemade blue chocolate chip cookies, buttery and hot, with the chips still melting. Drinking it, my whole body felt warm and good, full of energy. My grief didn't go away, but I felt as if my mom had just brushed her hand against my cheek, given me a cookie the way she used to when I was small, and told me everything was going to be okay. Before I knew it, I drained the glass. I stared into it, sure I'd just had a warm drink, but the ice cubes hadn't even melted. "Was it good?" Grover asked. I nodded. "What did it taste like?" He sounded so wistful, I felt guilty. "Sorry, I said. "I should have let you taste." His eyes got wide. "No! That's not what I meant. I just wondered." "Chocolate chip cookies," I said. "My mom's. Homemade." He sighed. "And how do you feel?" Like I could throw Nancy Bobbitt 100 yards. "That's good," he said. "That's good. I don't think you could risk drinking any more of that stuff." "What do you mean?" He took the empty glass from me gingerly, as if it were dynamite, and set it back on the table. "Come on. Chiron and Mr. D are waiting." The porch wrapped all the way around the farmhouse. My legs felt wobbly trying to walk that far. Grover offered to carry the Minotaur horn, but I held on to it. I'd paid for that souvenir the hard way. I wasn't going to let it go. As we came around the opposite end of the house, I caught my breath. We must have been on the north shore of Long Island, because on this side of the house, the valley marched all the way up to the water, which glittered about a mile in the distance. Between here and there, I simply couldn't process everything I was seeing. The landscape was dotted with buildings that looked like ancient Greek architecture. An open-air pavilion, an amphitheater, a circular arena, except that they all looked brand new, their white marble columns sparkling in the sun. In a nearby sandpit, a dozen high school-aged kids and satyrs played volleyball. Canoes glided across the small lake. Kids in bright orange t-shirts like Grover's were chasing each other around a cluster of cabins nestled in the woods. Some shot targets at an archery range. Others rode horses down a wooded trail. And, unless I was hallucinating, some of their horses had wings. Down at the end of the porch, two men sat across from each other at a card table. The blonde-haired girl, who'd spoon-fed me popcorn-flavored pudding, was leaning on the porch rail next to them. The man facing me was small, but porky. He had a red nose, big watery eyes, and curly hair so black it was almost purple. He looked like those paintings of baby angels. What do you call them? Hubbubs? No, cherubs, that's it. He looked like a cherub who turned middle-aged in a trailer park. He wore a tiger-pattern Hawaiian shirt, and he would have fit right in at one of Gabe's poker parties, except I got the feeling this guy could have outgambled even my stepfather. "That's Mr. D," Grover murmured to me. "He's the camp director. Be polite. The girl, that's Annabeth Chase. She's just a camper, but she's been here longer than just about anybody. And you already know Chiron." He pointed at the guy whose back was to me. First I realized he was sitting in a wheelchair. Then I recognized the tweed jacket, the thinning brown hair, the scraggly beard. "Mr. Brunner!" I cried. The Latin teacher turned and smiled at me. His eyes had a mischievous glint they sometimes got in class when he pulled a pop quiz and made all the multiple choice answers B. "Ah, good, Percy," he said. "Now we have 4 for Pinochle." He offered me a chair to the right of Mr. D, who looked at me with bloodshot eyes and heaved a great sigh. "Oh, I suppose I must say it. Welcome to Camp Half-Blood. There. Now don't expect me to be glad to see you." Thanks." I scooted a little further away from him, because if there was one thing I had learned from living with Gabe, it was how to tell when an adult had been hitting the happy juice. Mr. D was a stranger. If Mr. D was a stranger to alcohol, I was a satyr. "Annabeth?" Mr. Brunner called to the blonde girl. She came forward and Mr. Brunner introduced us.
This young lady nursed you back to health, Percy. Annabeth, my dear, why don't you go check on Percy's bunk? We'll be putting him in cabin 11 for now.
Annabeth said, "Sure, Chiron." She was probably my age, maybe a couple of inches taller, and a whole lot more athletic looking. With her deep tan and her curly blonde hair, she was almost exactly what I thought a stereotypical California girl would look like, except her eyes ruined the image. They were startling gray, like storm clouds. Pretty, but intimidating too. As if she were analyzing the best way to take me down in a fight. She glanced at the Minotaur horn in my hands, and then back at me. I imagined she was going to say, "You killed a Minotaur?" Or, "Wow, you're so awesome," or something like that. Instead, she said, "You drool when you sleep." Then she sprinted off down the lawn, her blonde hair flying behind her. "So," I said, anxious to change the subject, "you, work here, Mr. Brunner?"
Not Mr. Brunner,
the ex-Mr. Brunner said.
I'm afraid that was a pseudonym. You may call me Chiron.
Okay. Totally confused, I looked at the director. And Mr. D, does that stand for something? Mr. D stopped shuffling the cards. He looked at me like I'd just belched loudly. "Young man, names are powerful things. You don't just go around using them for no reason." "Oh, right. Sorry."
"I must say, Percy,"
Chiron Brunner broke in,
"I'm glad to see you alive. It's been a long time since I've made a house call to a potential camper. I'd hate to think I've wasted my time."
"House call?"
"My year at Yancey Academy, to instruct you. We have satyrs at most schools, of course, keeping a lookout, but Grover alerted me as soon as he met you. He sensed you were something special. So I decided to come upstate. I convinced the other Latin teacher to, take a leave of absence."
I tried to remember the beginning of the school year. It seemed like so long ago. But I did have a fuzzy memory of there being another Latin teacher my first week at Yancey. Then, without explanation, he had disappeared, and Mr. Brunner had taken the class. "You came to Yancey just to teach me?" I asked. Chiron nodded.
"Honestly, I wasn't sure about you at first. We contacted your mother, let her know we were keeping an eye on you in case you were ready for Camp Half-Blood. But you still had so much to learn. Nevertheless, you made it here alive, and that's always the first test."
"Grover," Mr. D said impatiently, "are you playing or not?"
"Yes, sir."
Grover trembled as he took the fourth chair, though I didn't know why he should be so afraid of a pudgy little man in a tiger print Hawaiian shirt. "You do know how to play pinochle?" Mr. D eyed me suspiciously. Hang on, my apologies. Can you guys hear the, yep. Can you guys hear the lawnmower, or the edger outside, the lawn work? Alright, give me 1 second. I'm gonna see if he can maybe do it in a little bit. 1 sec. Alright guys, I do apologize for the interruption. It appears that my roommate is going to be out there doing some leaf blowing and yard work for about 10 more minutes. It's going to rain the next 3 days, so it's something that he actually doesn't really need to get done. I went ahead and asked, if it was something that he could push off, but given that it will only be about 10 minutes, I would like to ask if all of you guys would be okay with waiting that long to continue the story. I feel bad about asking, but I don't feel that bad. It really is something that needs to get done. But is that all right? Are you guys cool with that? You guys would be cool with going through it? I definitely would like to keep on reading. It seems like it only really like gets real loud when it's like right outside my window there. So I don't think he'll be around my window too often. All right, cool. Let's do it then. Alright, let me bring back the reading time scene here. Alright. Okay, looks like we're ready to go.
Alright. You do know how to play Pinochle. Mr. D eyed me suspiciously. I'm afraid not, I said. I'm afraid not, sir, he said. Sir, I repeated. I was liking the camp director less and less. Well, he told me, it is, along with gladiator fighting and Pac-Man, one of the greatest games ever invented by humans. I would expect all civilized young men to know the rules. I'm sure the boy can learn, Chiron said. Please, I said. What is this place? What am I doing here? Mr. Brunt... Chiron. Why would you go to Yancey Academy just to teach me? Mr. D snorted. I am having trouble snorting. There it is. I asked the same question. The camp director dealt the cards. Grover flinched every time one landed in his pile. Chiron smiled at me sympathetically, the way he used to in Latin class, as if to let me know that, no matter what my average was, I was his star student. He expected me to have the right answer. Percy, he said, did your mother tell you nothing? She said... I remembered her sad eyes, looking out over the sea. She told me she was afraid to send me here. Even though my father had wanted her to, she said that once I was here, I probably couldn't leave. She wanted to keep me close to her. Typical, Mr. D said. That's how they usually get killed. Young man, are you bidding or not? What? I asked. He explained impatiently how you bid in Pinochle, and so I did. I'm afraid there's too much to tell, Chiron said. I'm afraid our usual orientation film won't be sufficient.
Orientation film? I asked.
No, Chiron decided. Well, Percy, you know your friend Grover is a satyr. You know,
he pointed to the horn in the shoebox,
that you have killed a minotaur. No small feat either, lad. What you may not know is that great powers are at work in your life. Gods. The forces you call Greek gods are very much alive.
I stared at the others around the table. I waited for somebody to yell, "Not!" But all I got was Mr. D yelling, "Oh, royal marriage! Trick, trick!" He cackled as he tallied up his points. "Mr. D," Grover asked timidly, "if you're not going to eat it, could I have your Diet Coke can?" "Eh? Oh, all right." Grover bit a huge shard out of the empty aluminum can and chewed it mournfully. "Wait," I told Chiron. "You're telling me there's such a thing as God?"
Well now, Chiron said. God, capital G, God. That's a different matter altogether. We shan't deal with the metaphysical.
Metaphysical? But you were just talking about...
Gods, plural. As in, great beings that control the forces of nature, and human endeavors. The immortal gods of Olympus. That's a smaller matter.
Smaller?
Yes, quite. The gods we discussed in Latin class.
Zeus, I said. Hera, Apollo. You mean them? And there it was again. Distant thunder on a cloudless day. "Young man," said Mr. D, "I would really be less casual about throwing those names around if I were you." "But they're stories," I said. "They're myths to explain lightning and the seasons and stuff. They're what people believed before there was science." "Science!" Mr. D scoffed. "And tell me, Perseus Jackson." I flinched when he said my real name, which I never told anybody. "What will people think of your science 2,000 years from now?" Mr. D continued. They will call it primitive mumbo jumbo. That's what. Oh, I love mortals. They have absolutely no sense of perspective. They think they've come so far. And have they, Chiron? Look at this boy and tell me. I wasn't liking Mr. D much, but there was something about the way he called me mortal, as if he wasn't. It was enough to put a lump in my throat, to suggest why Grover was dutifully minding his cards, chewing a soda can, and keeping his mouth shut.
"Percy," Chiron said, "you may choose to believe or not, but the fact is that immortal means immortal. You can imagine that for a moment. Never dying, never fading, existing just as you are, for all time." I was about to answer, off the top of my head, that it sounded like a pretty good deal, but the tone of Chiron's voice made me hesitate. "You mean whether people believe in you or not?" I said. "Exactly," Chiron agreed. "If you were a god, how would you like being called a myth? An old story to explain lightning? What if I told you, Perseus Jackson, that someday people would call you a myth, just created to explain how little boys can get over losing their mothers.
My heart pounded. He was trying to make me angry, for some reason. But I wasn't going to let him. I said, I wouldn't like it, but I don't believe in gods. Oh, you'd better, Mr. D murmured, before one of them incinerates you. Grover said, Please, sir. He's just lost his mother. He's in shock. A lucky thing, too, Mr. D grumbled, playing a card. Bad enough I'm confined to this miserable job, working with boys who don't even believe. He waved his hand, and a goblet appeared on the table, as if the sunlight had bent momentarily and woven the air into glass. The goblet filled itself with red wine. My jaw dropped, but Chiron hardly looked up.
Mr. D, he warned, your restrictions.
Mr. D looked at the wine in feigned surprise. Dear me. He looked at the sky and yelled, Old habits. Sorry. More thunder. Mr. D waved his hand again, and the wine glass changed into a fresh can of Diet Coke. He sighed unhappily, popped the top of the soda, and went back to his card game. Chiron winked at me.
Mr. D offended his father a while back. Took a fancy to a wood nymph who had been declared off limits.
A wood nymph, I repeated, still staring at the Diet Coke can, like it was from outer space. Yes, Mr. D confessed. Father loves to punish me. The first time, prohibition. Ghastly. Absolutely horrid 10 years. The second time, well, she was really pretty, and I could not stay away. The second time, he sent me here. Half-Blood Hill, summer camp for brats like you. Be a better influence, he told me. Work with youths rather than tearing them down. Ha! Absolutely unfair. Mr. D sounded about 6 years old, like a pounding little kid. And, I stammered, your father is... D. Immortalis, Chiron, Mr. D said. I thought you taught this boy the basics. My father is Zeus, of course. I ran through D names from Greek mythology. Wine, the tiger, the skin of a tiger, the satyrs that all seemed to work here. The way Grover cringed, as if Mr. D were his master. You're Dionysus, I said, the god of wine. Mr. D rolled his eyes. What do they say these days, Grover? Do the children say, well, duh? Yes, Mr. D. Then well, duh, Percy Jackson. Did you think I was Aphrodite, perhaps? You're a god. Yes, child. A god. You. He turned to look at me straight on, and I saw a kind of purplish fire in his eyes. A hint that this whiny, plump little man was only showing me the tiniest bit of his true nature. I saw visions of grapevines choking unbelievers to death, drunken warriors insane with battle lust, sailors screaming as their hands turned to flippers, their faces elongated into dolphin snouts. I knew that if I pushed him, Mr. D would show me worse things. He would plant a disease in my brain that would leave me wearing a straitjacket in a rubber room for the rest of my life. Would you like to test me, child? He said quietly. No, sir. The fire died a little. He turned back to his card game. I believe I win.
Not quite, Mr. D,
Chiron said. He set down a straight, tallied the points, and said,
The game goes to me.
I thought Mr. D was going to vaporize Chiron right out of his wheelchair. but he just sighed through his nose, as if he were used to being beaten by the Latin teacher. He got up, and Grover rose too. "I'm tired," Mr. D said. "I believe I'll take a nap before the sing-along tonight. But first, Grover, we need to talk again about your less-than-perfect performance on this assignment." Grover's face beaded with sweat.
Yes, sir."
Mr. D turned to me. "Cabin 11, Percy Jackson. And mind your manners." He swept into the farmhouse, Grover following miserably. "Will Grover be okay?" I asked Chiron. Chiron nodded, though he looked a bit troubled.
"Old Dionysus isn't really mad. He just hates his job. He's been, grounded, I guess you would say. And he can't stand waiting another century before he's allowed to go back to Olympus."
"Mount Olympus," I said. "You're telling me there really is a palace there?"
"Well now, there's Mount Olympus in Greece, and then there's the home of the gods, the convergence point of their powers, which did indeed used to be on Mount Olympus. It's still called Mount Olympus out of respect to the old ways, but the palace moves, Percy, just as the gods do."
"You mean the Greek gods are here? Like, in America?"
"Well, certainly. The gods move with the heart of the West."
"The what?"
"Come now, Percy. What you call Western civilization. Do you think it's just an abstract concept? No. It's a living force, a collective consciousness that had burned bright for thousands of years. The gods are part of it. You might even say they are the source of it, or at least they are tied so tightly to it that they couldn't possibly fade. Not unless all of Western civilization were obliterated. The fire started in Greece. Then, as you well know, or as I hope you know, since you passed my course, the heart of the fire moved to Rome. So did the gods. Oh, different names perhaps. Jupiter for Zeus, Venus for Aphrodite, and so on. The same forces, the same gods."
"And then they died."
"Died? No. Did the West die? The gods simply moved. To Germany, to France, to Spain for a while. Whether the flame was brightest, wherever the flame was brightest, the gods were there. They spent several centuries in England. All you need to do is look at the architecture. People do not forget the gods. Every place they've ruled for the last 3,000 years, you can see them in paintings, in statues, on the most important buildings. And yes, Percy, of course, they are now in your United States. Look at your symbol, the eagle of Zeus. Look at the statue of Prometheus in Rockefeller Center. The Greek facades of your government building in Washington. I defy you to find any American city where the Olympians are not prominently displayed in multiple places. Like it or not, and believe me, plenty of people weren't very fond of Rome either. America is now the heart of the flame. It is the great power of the West. And so Olympus is here. And we are here."
It was all too much, especially the fact that I seemed to be included in Chiron's we, as if I were part of some club. "Who are you, Chiron? Who am I?" Chiron smiled. He shifted his weight as if he were going to get up out of his wheelchair. But I knew that was impossible. He was paralyzed from the waist down.
"Who are you?"
he mused.
"Well, that's the question we all want answered, isn't it? But for now, we shall get you a bunk in cabin 11. There will be new friends to meet, and plenty of time for lessons tomorrow. Besides, there will be s'mores at the campfire tonight, and I simply adore chocolate."
And then he did rise from his wheelchair. But there was something odd about the way he did it. His blanket fell away from his legs, but the legs didn't move. His waist kept getting longer, rising above his belt. At first, I thought he was wearing a very long white velvet underwear. But as he kept rising out of the chair, taller than any man, I realized that the velvet underwear wasn't underwear. It was the front of an animal. Muscle and sinew under coarse white fur. And the wheelchair wasn't a chair. It was some kind of container, an enormous box on wheels. And it must have been magic, because there's no way it could have held all of him. A leg came out, long and knobby-kneed, with a huge, polished hoof. Then another front leg, then hindquarters, and then the box was empty. Nothing but a metal shell with a couple of fake human legs attached. I stared at the horse, who had just sprung from the wheelchair. A huge white stallion. But where its neck should be was the upper body of my Latin teacher, smoothly grafted to the horse's trunk.
"What a relief," the centaur said. "I'd been cooped up in there so long my fetlocks had fallen asleep. Now come, Percy Jackson. Let's meet the other campers."
And that is the end of chapter 5. Hope everybody's enjoying. I'm gonna do as I normally do at the end of a chapter and take a small break to get some water. I'm gonna encourage you guys to take this chance to use the bathroom or get anything done that you might need to, because it is break time. Real quick, any any thoughts on the story so far? I'll give it a minute since I know there is a bit of a delay. They did Dionysus dirty? What do you mean? I don't know, I like his character. It's unique. Not exactly a lovable one. I don't know. It could be lovable, I think. Ooh, yeah, the follow-up series is so good. I believe I finished it, but I'm not entirely sure actually. Nice. Yeah, man. If you're not busy from 6 to 8, I'm normally streaming around that time and reading a little Percy Jackson. Also know that a lot of my responses to the chat are definitely going to be quite delayed. So give it a little bit whenever you send a message. If you have me if you have me added on Discord and ever want to say something, you can certainly send a message through there, through that means. Oh man, thank you, Keaton. That really does mean a lot. I'm doing my darndest. I hope I'm doing justice to Chiron. The voice that I decided to go for him is a little bit hard to keep up. I don't know. I suppose that's for you guys to decide. I think I'm doing an alright job with it. Alright, no more responses for the moment. I'm gonna shut off my camera for a sec and go use the restroom, get some water, and we'll come on back and get to reading the next chapter. We may go a little bit later than we normally do. It depends on how long the chapter is, but I'm looking forward to it. Alright, I love you guys bunches, and again, thank you for sticking around and listening to me read a little story. Alright, see you guys soon. Alright, we are back in action. Hope everybody got the chance to relieve their bladders and get themselves a snack and or a drink of some kind. But yeah, it is good to be back, and I'm ready to jump right into this next chapter. Let's go for it. Let me pause the music here. There we go. Alright, again, this is Percy Jackson, the Lightning Thief, by Rick Riordan. Chapter 6. I become Supreme Lord of the Bathroom. Once I got over the fact that my Latin teacher was a horse, we had a nice tour, though I was careful not to walk behind him. I'd done Pooper Scooper patrol in the Macy's Thanksgiving Day parade a few times, and I'm sorry, I did not trust Chiron's back end the way I trusted his front. We passed the volleyball pit. Several of the campers nudged each other. One pointed to the Minotaur horn I was carrying. Another said, "That's him." Most of the campers were older than me. Their satyr friends were bigger than Grover, all of them trotting around in orange Camp Half-Blood t-shirts, with nothing else to cover their bare, shaggy hindquarters. I wasn't normally shy, but the way they stared at me made me uncomfortable. I felt like they were expecting me to do a flip or something. I looked back at the farmhouse. It was a lot bigger than I'd realized. 4 stories tall. Sky blue with white trim, like an upscale seaside resort. I was checking out the brass eagle, a weather vane on top, when something caught my eye. A shadow in the uppermost window of the attic gable. Something had moved the curtain, just for a second, and I got the distinct impression I was being watched. "What's up there?" I asked Chiron. He looked where I was pointing, and his smile faded. "Just the attic." Somebody lives there?" "No," he said with finality. "Not a single living thing." I got the feeling he was being truthful, but I was also sure something had moved that curtain. "Come along, Percy," Chiron said with his light-hearted tone, now a little forced. "Lots to see." We walked through the strawberry fields where campers were picking bushels of berries while a satyr played a tune on a reed pipe. Chiron told me the camp grew a nice crop for export to New York restaurants in Mount Olympus. "It pays our expenses," he explained, "and the strawberries take almost no effort." He said Mr. D had this effect on fruit-bearing plants. They just went crazy when he was around. It worked best with wine grapes, but Mr. D was restricted from growing those, so they grew strawberries instead. I watched the satyr playing his pipes. His music was causing lines of bugs to leave the strawberry patch in every direction, like refugees fleeing a fire. I wondered if Grover could work that kind of magic with music. I wondered if he was still inside the farmhouse getting chewed out by Mr. D. Grover won't get in too much trouble, will he? I asked Chiron. I mean, he was a good protector, really. Chiron sighed. He shed his tweed jacket and draped it over his horse's back like a saddle.
Grover has big dreams, Percy. Perhaps bigger than are reasonable. To reach his goal, he must first demonstrate great courage by succeeding as a keeper, finding a new camper and bringing him safely to Half-Blood Hill.
But he did that.
I might agree with you, Chiron said, but it's not my place to judge. Dionysus and the Council of Cloven Elders must decide. I'm afraid they might not see this assignment as a success. After all, Grover lost you in New York. Then there's the unfortunate fate of your mother, and the fact that Grover was unconscious when you dragged him over the property line. The council might question whether this shows any courage on Grover's part.
I wanted to protest. None of what happened was Grover's fault. I also felt really, really guilty. If I hadn't given Grover the slip at the bus station, he might not have gotten in trouble. He'll get a second chance, won't he? Chiron winced.
I'm afraid that was Grover's second chance, Percy. The council was not anxious to give him another either. After what happened the first time, 5 years ago. Olympus knows. I advised him to wait longer before trying again. He's still so small for his age.
How old is he?
Oh, 28.
What? And he's in 6th grade?
Satyrs mature half as fast as humans, Percy. Grover has been the equivalent of a middle school student for the past 6 years.
That's horrible.
Quite,
Chiron agreed.
At any rate, Grover is a late bloomer, even by satyr standards, and not yet very accomplished as a woodland magic. At woodland magic. Alas, he was anxious to pursue his dream. Perhaps now he will find some other career.
That's not fair, I said. What happened the first time? Was it really so bad? Chiron looked away quickly.
Let's move along, shall we?
But I wasn't quite ready to let the subject drop. Something had occurred to me when Chiron talked about my mother's fate, as if he were intentionally avoiding the word death. The beginnings of an idea, a tiny hopeful fire, started forming in my mind. Chiron, I said, if the gods and Olympus and all that are real...
Yes, child?
Does that mean the underworld is real too? Chiron's expression darkened.
Yes, child.
He paused as if choosing his words carefully.
There is a place where spirits go after death. But for now, until we know more, I would urge you to put that out of your mind.
What do you mean, until we know more?
Come, Percy. Let's see the woods.
As we got closer, I realized how huge the forest was. It took up at least a quarter of the valley, with trees so tall and thick, you could imagine nobody had been in there since the Native Americans. Chiron said,
The woods are stocked, if you care to try your luck, but go armed.
Stocked with what? I asked. Armed with what?
You'll see. Capture the flag is Friday night. Do you have your own sword and shield?
My own?
No, Chiron said. I don't suppose you do. I think a size 5 will do. I'll visit the armory later.
I wanted to ask what kind of summer camp had an armory, but there was too much else to think about. So the tour continued. We We saw the archery range, canoeing lake, the stables, which Chiron didn't seem to like very much, the javelin range, the sing-along amphitheater, and the arena where Chiron said they held sword and spear fights. Sword and spear fights? I asked.
Cabin challenges and all that, he explained. Not lethal, usually. Oh, yes, and there's the mess hall.
Chiron pointed to an outdoor pavilion, framed in white Grecian columns on the hill overlooking the sea. There were a dozen stone picnic tables. No roof, no walls. What do you do when it rains? I asked. Chiron looked at me as if I'd gone a little weird.
We still have to eat, don't we?
I decided to drop the subject. Finally, he showed me the cabins. There were 12 of them nestled in the woods by the lake. They were arranged in a U, with 2 at the base and 5 in a row on either side. And they were without a doubt the most bizarre collection of buildings I'd ever seen. Except for the fact that each had a large brass number above the door. Odds on the left, evens on the right. They looked absolutely nothing alike. Number 9 had smokestacks, like a tiny factory. Number 4 had tomato vines on the walls and a roof made out of real glass. 7 seemed to be made of solid gold, which gleamed so much in the sunlight it was almost impossible to look at. They all faced a commons area about the size of a soccer field, dotted with Greek statues, fountains, flower beds, and a couple of basketball hoops, which were more my speed. In the center of the field was a huge stone-lined fire pit. Even though it was a warm afternoon, the hearth smoldered. A girl about 9 years old was tending the flames, poking the coals with a stick. The pair of cabins at the head of the field, numbers 1 and 2, looked like his and hers mausoleums, big white marble boxes with heavy columns in front. Cabin 1 was the biggest and bulkiest of the 12. Its polished bronze doors shimmered like a hologram, so that from different angles, lightning bolts seemed to streak across them. Cabin 2 was more graceful somehow, with slimmer columns, garlanded with pomegranates and flowers. The walls were carved with images of peacocks. Zeus and Hera? I guessed.
Correct,
Chiron said. Their cabins look empty.
Several of the cabins are. That's true. No one ever stays in 1 or 2.
Okay, so each cabin had a different god, like a mascot. 12 cabins for the 12 Olympians. But why would some be empty? I stopped in front of the first cabin on the left, cabin 3. It wasn't high and mighty like cabin 1, but long and low and solid. The outer walls were of rough gray stone, studded with pieces of seashell and coral, as if the slabs had been hewn straight from the bottom of the ocean floor. I peeked inside the doorway, and Chiron said,
"Oh, I wouldn't do that."
Before he could pull me back, I caught the salty scent of the interior, like the wind on the shore of Montauk. The interior walls glowed like abalone. There were 6 empty bunk beds with silk sheets turned down, but there was no sign anyone had ever slept there. The place felt so sad and lonely. I was glad when Chiron put his hand on my shoulder and said,
"Come along, Percy."
Most of the other cabins were crowded with campers. Number 5 was bright red, a real nasty paint job, as if the color had been splashed on with buckets and fists. The roof was lined with barbed wire. A stuffed wild boar head hung over the doorway, and its eyes seemed to follow me. Inside, I could see a bunch of mean-looking kids, both girls and boys, arm wrestling and arguing with each other, while rock music blared. The loudest was a girl maybe 13 or 14. She wore a size XXXL Camp Half-Blood t-shirt under a camouflage jacket. She zeroed in on me and gave me an evil sneer. She reminded me of Nancy Bobofit, though the camper girl was much bigger and tougher looking, and her hair was long and stringy, and brown instead of red. I kept walking, trying to stay close to Chiron's hooves. "We haven't seen any other centaurs," I observed. "No," Chiron said sadly. "My kinsmen are a wild and barbaric folk, I'm afraid. You might encounter them in the wilderness or at major sporting events, but you won't see any here." "You said your name was Chiron. Are you really—" He smiled down at me. "The Chiron from the stories? Trainer of Hercules and all that? Yes, Percy, I am." "But shouldn't you be dead?" Chiron paused, as if the question intrigued him. "I honestly don't know about should be. The truth is, I can't be dead. You see, eons ago, the gods granted my wish. I could continue the work I loved. I could be a teacher of heroes as long as humanity needed me. I gained much from that wish, and I gave up much. But I'm still here, so I can only assume I'm still needed." I thought about being a teacher for 3,000 years. It would not have made my top 10 things to wish for list. "Doesn't it ever get boring?" No, he said. "Horribly depressing at times, but never boring." "Why depressing?" Chiron seemed to turn hard of hearing again. "Oh, look," he said. "Annabeth is waiting for us." The blonde girl I'd met at the big house was reading a book in front of the last cabin on the left, number 11. When we reached her, she looked me over critically, like she was still thinking about how much I drooled. I tried to see what she was reading, but I couldn't make out the title. I thought my dyslexia was acting up. Then I realized the title wasn't even English. The letters looked Greek to me. I mean literally Greek. There were pictures of temples and statues, and different kinds of columns, like those in an architecture book. "Annabeth," Chiron said, "I have master's archery class at noon. Would you take Percy from here?" "Yes, sir." "Cabin 11, Chiron told me, gesturing towards the doorway. "Make yourself at home." Out of all the cabins, 11 looked the most like a regular old summer camp cabin, with the emphasis on old. The threshold was worn down, the brown paint peeling. Over the doorway was one of those doctor symbols, a winged pole with 2 snakes wrapped around it. What did they call it? A caduceus? Inside, it was packed with people, both boys and girls, way more than the number of bunk beds. Sleeping bags were spread all over the floor. It looked like a gym where the Red Cross had set up an evacuation center. Chiron didn't go in. The door was too low for him. But when the campers saw him, they all stood and bowed respectfully. "Well then," Chiron said. "Good luck, Percy. I'll see you at dinner." He galloped away toward the archery range. I stood in the doorway, looking at the kids. They weren't bowing anymore. They were staring at me, sizing me up. I knew this routine. I'd gone through it at enough schools. "Well?" Annabeth prompted. "Go on." So naturally, I tripped coming in the door and made a total fool of myself. There were some snickers from the campers, but none of them said anything. Annabeth announced, "Percy Jackson, meet Cabin 11." Regular or undetermined? Somebody asked. I didn't know what to say, but Annabeth said, Undetermined. Everybody groaned. A guy who was a little older than the rest came forward. Now, campers. That's what we're here for. Welcome, Percy. You can have the spot on the floor right over there. The guy was about 19, and he looked pretty cool. He was tall and muscular, with short cropped sandy hair and a friendly smile. He wore an orange tank top, cutoffs, cutoffs, sandals, and a leather necklace with 5 different colored clay beads. The only thing unsettling about his appearance was a thick white scar that ran from just beneath his right eye to his jaw, like an old knife slash. This is Luke, Annabeth said, and her voice sounded different somehow. I glanced over and could have sworn she was blushing. She saw me looking, and her expression hardened again. He's our counselor for now. For now? I asked. You're undetermined, Luke explained patiently. They don't know what cabin to put you in, so you're here. Cabin 11 takes all newcomers, all visitors. Naturally we would. Hermes our patron. He's the god of travelers. I looked at the tiny section of floor they'd given me. I had nothing to put there to mark it as my own. No luggage, no clothes, no sleeping bag. Just the Minotaur's horn. I thought about setting that down, but then I remembered that Hermes was also the god of thieves. I looked around at the campers' faces, some sullen and suspicious, some grinning stupidly, some eyeing me as if they were waiting for a chance to pick my pockets. How long will I be here? I asked. Good question, Luke said. Until you're determined. How long would that take? The campers all laughed. Come on, Annabeth told me. Come on, Annabeth told me. I'll show you the volleyball court. I've already seen it. Come on. She grabbed my wrist and dragged me outside. I could hear the kids of Cabin 11 laughing behind me. When we were a few feet away, Annabeth said, Jackson, you have to do better than that. What? She rolled her eyes and mumbled under her breath. I can't believe I thought you were the one. What's your problem? I was getting angry now. All I know is I killed some bull guy. Don't talk like that, Annabeth told me. You know how many kids at this camp wish they'd had your chance? To get killed? To fight the Minotaur? What do you think we were training for? I shook my head. Look, if the thing I fought really was the Minotaur, the same one in the stories, yes, then there's only one. Yes. And he died like a gajillion years ago, right? Theseus killed him in the labyrinth? So, monsters don't die, Percy. They can be killed, but they don't die. Oh, thanks. That clears it up. They don't have souls like you and me. You can dispel them for a while, maybe even for a whole lifetime if you're lucky. But they are primal forces. Chiron calls them archetypes. Eventually, they reform. I thought about Mrs. Dodds. You mean if I killed one accidentally with a sword? The Fuhrer. I mean, your math teacher. That's right. She's still out there. You just made her very, very mad. How'd you know about Mrs. Dodds? You talk in your sleep. You almost called her something. A Fury? They're Hades' torturers, right? Annabeth glanced nervously at the ground, as if she expected it to open up and swallow her. You shouldn't call them by name, even here. We call them kindly ones, if we have to speak of them at all. Look, is there anything we can say without it thundering? I sounded whiny, even to myself. But right then, I didn't care. Why do I have to stay in cabin 11 anyways? Why is everybody so crowded together? There are plenty of empty bunks right over there. I pointed to the first few cabins. Annabeth turned pale. You don't just choose a cabin, Percy. Depends on who your parents are. Or your parent. She stared at me, waiting for me to get it. My mom is Sally Jackson, I said. She works at the candy store in Grand Central Station. At least, she used to. I'm sorry about your mom, Percy. But that's not what I mean. I'm talking about your other parent. Your dad. He's dead. I never knew him. Annabeth sighed. Clearly, she had this conversation before with other kids. Your father's not dead, Percy. How can you say that? You know him? No, of course not. Then how can you say, because I know you? You wouldn't be here if you weren't one of us. You don't know anything about me. No? She raised an eyebrow. I bet you moved around from school to school. I bet you were kicked out of a lot of them. How? Diagnosed with dyslexia? Probably ADHD, too. I tried to swallow my embarrassment. What does that have to do with anything? Taken together, it's almost a sure sign. The letters float off the page when you read, right? That's because your mind is hardwired for ancient Greek. In the ADHD, you're impulsive. Can't sit in a classroom. That's your battlefield reflexes. In a real fight, they'd keep you alive. As for the attention problems, that's because you see too much, Percy, not too little. Your senses are better than a regular mortal's. Of course the teachers want to medicate you. Most of them are monsters. They don't want you seeing them for what they are. You sound like you went through the same thing. Most of the kids here did. If you weren't like us, you couldn't have survived the Minotaur, much less the ambrosia and nectar. Ambrosia, nectar. The food and drink we were giving you to make you better. The stuff would have killed a normal kid. It would have turned your blood to fire and your bones to sand, and you'd be dead. Face it. You're a half-blood. A half-blood. I was reeling with so many questions, I didn't know where to start. Then a husky voice yelled, Well, newbie! I looked over. The big girl from the ugly red cabin was sauntering towards us. She had 3 other girls behind her, all big and ugly and mean-looking like her, all wearing camo jackets. Clarice, Annabeth sighed. Why don't you go polish your spear or something? Sure, Miss Princess, the big girl said. So I can run you through with it Friday night. Eres Caracas, Annabeth said, which I somehow understood was Greek for go to the crows, though I had a feeling it was a worse curse than it sounded. You don't stand a chance. We'll pulverize you, Clarice said, but her eye twitched. Perhaps she wasn't sure she could follow through on her threat. She turned towards me. Who's this little runt? Percy Jackson, Annabeth said. Meet Clarice, daughter of Ares. I blinked. Like the war god? Clarice sneered. You got a problem with that? No, I said, recovering my wits. It explains the bad smell. Clarice growled. We got an initiation ceremony for newbies, Percy. Percy. Whatever. Come on, I'll show you. Clarice, Annabeth tried to say. Stay out of it, wise girl. Annabeth looked pained, but she did stay out of it, and I didn't really want her help. I was the new kid. I had to earn my own rep. I handed Annabeth my Minotaur horn and got ready to fight, but before I knew it, Clarice had me by the neck and was dragging me towards a cinder block building that I knew immediately was the bathroom. I was kicking and punching. I'd been in plenty of fights before, but this big girl Clarice had hands like iron. She dragged me into the girls' bathroom. There was a line of toilets on one side and a line of shower stalls down the other. It smelled just like any public bathroom, and I was thinking, as much as I could think, with Clarice ripping at my hair, that if this place belonged to the gods, they should have been able to afford classier Johns. Clarice's friends were all laughing, and I was trying to find my strength. And I was trying to find the strength I'd use to fight the Minotaur, but it just wasn't there.
Like he's big 3 material,
Clarice said as she pushed me towards one of the toilets.
Yeah, right. Minotaur probably fell over laughing. He was so stupid looking.
Her friend snickered. Annabeth stood in the corner watching through her fingers. Clarice bent me over on my knees and started pushing my head towards the toilet bowl. It reeked like rusted pipes and, well, like what goes into toilets. I strained to keep my head up. I was looking at the scummy water thinking, I will not go into that. I won't. Then, something happened. I felt a tug in the pit of my stomach. I heard the plumbing rumble, the pipes shudder. Clarice's grip on my hair loosened. Water shot out of the toilet, making an arc straight over my head, and the next thing I knew, I was sprawled on the bathroom tiles, with Clarice screaming behind me. I turned just as water blasted out of the toilet again and hit Clarice straight in the face so hard, it pushed her down onto her butt. The water stayed on her like a spray from a fire hose, pushing her backward into a shower stall. She struggled, gasping, and her friends started coming toward her, but then the other toilets exploded too. 6 more streams of toilet water blasted them back. The showers acted up too, and together, all the fixtures sprayed the camouflage girls right out of the bathroom, spinning them around like pieces of garbage being washed away. As soon as they were out the door, I felt the tug in my gut lessen, and the water shut off as quickly as it had started. The entire bathroom was flooded. Annabeth hadn't been spared. She was dripping wet, but she hadn't been pushed out the door. She was standing in exactly the same place, staring at me in shock. I looked down and realized I was sitting in the only dry spot in the whole room. There was a circle of dry floor around me. I didn't have one drop of water on my clothes. Nothing. I stood up, my legs shaky. Annabeth said, "How did you—" "I don't know." We walked to the door. Outside, Clarice and her friends were sprawled in the mud, and a bunch of other campers had gathered around to gawk. Clarice's hair was flattened across her face. Her camouflage jacket was sopping, and she smelled like sewage. She gave me a look of absolute hatred.
"You are dead, new boy. You are totally dead."
I probably should have let it go, but I said, "You want to gargle with toilet water again, Clarice? Close your mouth." Her friends had to hold her back. They dragged her toward cabin 5, while the other campers made way to avoid her flailing feet. Annabeth stared at me. I couldn't tell whether she was just grossed out or angry at me for dousing her. "What?" I demanded. "What are you thinking?" "I'm thinking," she said, "that I want you on my team for Capture the Flag." And that ends Chapter 6. Nice. All right. Shoot, I could feel my voice waning a bit towards the end there. I chose a couple of raspy voices for for some of the characters. And I can feel the effects, certainly. Snoopy, how you hanging in there, bud? Are you even reading the same book as me? No, he's being unresponsive today. I don't know, he kind of looks a little down. Hope he's all right. Can I get some love in the chat for Snoopy? Like I said, he might be a little down. He's reading books about bunnies. He hates bunnies. Alright, I'm gonna turn the music back on and talk a little bit if we'd like. Love for Snoop, no doubt about it. Well, guys, any thoughts? Either critiques to make the performance better or the Twitch stream better. I put some effort in today to kind of up the quality of the look of the stream, at least. I know I still have kind of a crummy webcam and whatnot, but I went ahead and tried to make I used one of the themes and tried to customize it a bit to give it a nice look. But yeah, any suggestions or things you guys would like to see, or maybe switch ups to how I'm doing the voices, or I don't know, anything like that. Also, if you guys have any thoughts on the story itself, how did you feel when Clarice got shot by a toilet water? Honey and tea, no doubt about it. All good? Heck yeah. Yeah, were you guys surprised? Well, I know, Keaton, you know about it already, but Coleman, were you surprised when Chiron stood up from his wheelchair and became a horse? I know when I came across that part when I was younger, my mind was blown. I was like, you mean to tell me Mr. Brunner's a horse? He's a horse? What? Nice. Man, we ended the stream with around 7 viewers. That's really sick. I mean, I also want to mention, I mention this most every stream towards the end, but I'm very, very grateful for you guys coming around and listening to me read a little story. I've said it before, but I'm pretty proud of my ability to read a story and kind of draw out the emotion from it and try my best to make it compelling. And yeah, just a minute ago he didn't have 2 legs, and now you're telling me he has 4? What? Yeah, man. That was a good chapter. I also love I actually love Mr. D. At least I like the voice that I've given him and his characteristics. Did you guys expect Mr. D? Or I know, Keaton, you've read the book before. Did you expect I don't know. You maybe had no expectations, but what did you expect from like Mr. D's voice? Slash did you like my rendition of it? Oh snap. We also have our little cats. This one right here is a troublemaker. He's a goober. That's right, Harry. You heard me. You're a goober. The one right here, though, he's super chill. He's a little bit needy though. He's an attention hog. The other one is just mischievous. Well, alright. I'm definitely a little tired. I'm ready for dinner. I'm sure you guys are too, so. I remember him having like no impression of me. I remember him having like no impression on me voice-wise on first read, but I love your high and mighty yet somehow whiny take. Heck yeah, man. I'm a fan. Well, again, unless anybody has any final thoughts, I've kind of shared a little bit, at least about how I felt about those chapters. Again, I do feel I feel I tripped up a little bit more on this stream, but that's bound to happen on some of them, as this is a live broadcast. But Rick Riordan, I pray I did it justice today, and I think we'll be calling it there. Once again, thank you all for coming down to the stream, and I hope to see you tomorrow around the same time. Remember, I stream almost every day from about 6 to 8. I did remember, though, this week that Monday and Thursday I actually have workouts or practices with my tumbling and trampoline team from around 6:15 to 7:15. So Monday and Thursdays I'm actually going to have to be pushing the start of the stream back to about 7:30. But that'll be cool, I think. It'll be okay to have the time vary a little bit. However, I really do like this 6 to 8 time slot. I feel like it works out well. But who knows? Maybe moving it back will be for the best. Don't know who all is on the Twitchverse, Twitchiverse, in the later hours, or in the evening hours rather. Alright, I'm gonna go ahead and play the end outro song and cut off the stream. Right on. Remember to be merry, remember the merry times, and do your best to do your best. It sounds cliche, but honest. Do your best. Alright. Much love to everybody, and I will be seeing you. Alright, have a lovely night, guys. And I hope everyone stays merry. Much love. Peace.